I've seen a lot of people talking about some reporting that I'll show to you and a video of state-run media in Russia broadcasting something sort of questionable, strange, eyebrow-raising for sure. Let's start with this. I don't actually feel the need to give it that much airtime because it's not that consequential, but because it is a topic of conversation and raising questions about, is this sort of sending a message in some way? Let's quickly start with it, then get to something I find far more consequential. Newsweek reports that Russian state TV airs Melania Trump's nudes on prime time. As a reminder, back when Melania Trump was modeling, she took nude photographs for magazines and such, and so it talks about this. Obviously, this is not something I care about. Cool, she did nude modeling, but it's definitely not something, despite her claiming this at one point, that I see any relevant, prominent Democrats bringing up or taking issue with or mocking anyway, because why would we? My issues with Melania Trump relate to her political stances, of course. But a Russian state television network congratulated Melania Trump on her husband's reelection as president of the United States by showing nude photographs of her on live television, according to a post on X. And you sort of saw them giggling a little bit as they were playing it. And while her doing that, lots of things you can mock Melania Trump for, that doesn't seem to be one where there's any substantive political point to be made or any mockery that's justified. Why Russian state TV is choosing to do this as a way of recognizing Trump's win, that's the question people are trying to answer. Some of these explanations are a little strange to me, but Brian Krasenstein said this is Russia's state-run media airing salacious pictures of the future First Lady and Melania Trump. This is Putin letting Trump know that he is in charge. Watch as Trump rolls over. And we're trying to decide if we play it or not for you. Again, it feels just sort of needless. Like, oh my gosh, nude photos. It's crazy. So I'm going to go ahead and not. We'd have to go in and blur and everything, and that's just sort of a lot. So instead, we won't. But you can imagine we're playing a collage of photos of Melania Trump during her nude modeling career and kind of trying to hold back smiles. So Brian Krasenstein's explanation there. I saw also the Republican Voters Against Trump account on X and a lot of other people saying, they're sending Trump a signal that they own Trump and they'll do whatever they want. And Putin is sort of having his state-run media do this to send that message. I get, as we're about to get to, that there are some concerning Putin-Trump discussions to be had as Trump enters office. Why this would be the way that Putin sends a message, I don't know. That seems like a stretch to me, to be honest. I think just they decided to do this and found it humorous. And then quickly, before getting into something way more important, of the people out there, as I said, no one prominent, no Democratic politician has ever taken issue with the fact that Melania Trump modeled and sometimes nude modeling in her past. Our issues with her are all the other things politically. It actually is your side, MAGA, who seems to have difficulty engaging with the sort of expression that people engage in. And so if anyone has found this particularly salacious or notable, I'm sure it was a lot of MAGA folks. But if you are on the left and you found yourself mocking this, it isn't helpful and not justified. And let's keep our criticisms about things that are like this reporting from Bob Woodward.
Journalist, best known for breaking the Watergate scandal that ultimately led to the resignation of former President Richard Nixon. Bob Woodward, the author of the new book War, and Carl Bernstein, author of Chasing History. Bob, let me start with you. You've interviewed Trump at least 20 times, and I know recently...
By the way, while you're watching this, it'll be sort of long clip, so let me just get this in before. If you could click that subscribe button, that would be greatly appreciated. If you appreciate the work this show does, I'd appreciate you clicking the subscribe button.
You said that former president is far worse than Richard Nixon. Obviously, a majority of voters were not concerned. I'm wondering what you thought last night as you watched results come in. What do you think of where we're at right now?
Well, it's the functioning of democracy. So he's president-elect. There are lots of things to watch in what will be the new Trump administration. I just want to cite one of them, and that is the relationship Trump has with Putin, the Russian leader. I talked a couple of months ago to Dan Coates, the former director of national intelligence under Trump, and I said, what's going on in this relationship between Trump and Putin? And Dan Coates said, it's so close, it seems like it might be blackmail. CIA Director Bill Burns said, Putin manipulates. He's professionally trained to do that. Putin's got a plan just to do this exactly when Trump, and it's what he did when Trump was in office previously, and he's planning it again at playing Trump. So there is.
So before going further with that, some pretty crazy reporting, right? And Bob Woodward, renowned, would not just throw around things like Putin could have blackmail on Trump. And I don't throw that around either, because I think we have to be very evidential, and it's tough to prove such a thing. And so we can leave it at speculation, of course. But Bob Woodward is revealing, separate from if you think it's blackmail or just Trump's admiration of someone like Putin, it's notable by itself that top Trump intelligence officials in his first term thought something's off here. It's beyond just an ideological alignment, and there seems to be some manipulation deeper than that going on, rising to blackmail, which is something that's been speculated for a long time, just because Trump has acted so weird when it comes to Putin specifically. But I get how much that triggers certain people, even some people on the left who just scream Russia, Russia, Russia every time a topic like this comes up. I'm just saying, interesting that someone as credible as Bob Woodward would point to members of Trump's administration who were concerned about that, saw some signs that felt off. And regardless, throwing that completely to the side, what we do know is that Trump's actions that we can all see clearly, publicly, are cause enough for concern. To me, it's more concerning in how it informs us about Trump's ideology, that he's so enamored by authoritarians like Putin, that he sees in his mind, strength that is used to govern in an authoritarian way by Xi Jinping, Putin, Kim Jong-un, Viktor Orban, and others, to different extents, of course. That is the biggest concern. How Putin's going to specifically manipulate him is something we'll continue keeping tabs on. Is this Russian state TV thing related to that? Some people are convinced that it is. Again, that seems like a weird strategic move, to be honest, just sort of trivial. But we know Putin's trying to manipulate not just Trump, but citizens of the United States and all the different propaganda efforts that have gone on to help Trump politically. And we have to be on the lookout for that. We have to be calling it out. And then most foundationally, because it doesn't relate to speculation about what different things might be pushing and pulling and impacting Trump's decision making, what we know is Trump has an ideological fascination and alignment with really dangerous ideologies. Here's more.
There's much to watch, particularly in that relationship.
Carl, obviously the whatever problems the transition had the first time around in the new Trump administration, it seems like they've fought those out, they've learned from mistakes, and this will be far more, maybe, perhaps at least, it seems like it may be more efficient in the transition with no...
He goes further, he confirms it there, Bernstein, but maybe, I think we can all agree that the best thing for America would be incompetent which is usually not what you hope for in a president on the part of Trump's administration, that they won't be competent enough, like last time, to do the worst of what they're morally willing to do. So Trump has, in his rhetoric, shown us he would not be impeded by his morals in doing some terrible things. But just like how when he tried to overthrow our electoral process, he tried to implement this fraudulent elector scheme, he tried to pressure officials to participate in this fraud, he wasn't able to actually execute the plan. So our biggest fear centers around him learning from his past mistakes and him picking people who are loyal to him so they won't hinder some of these implementations. And that could end up being terrible because we know his intentions are bad. What will he actually be able to do is a big question. One little miscellaneous thing as to diagnosing this election result.
You've heard me over the last few days. I do have concerns about the way the Democratic Party relates to working class voters in this country. The only group that Democrats gained with in the election on Tuesday was white college graduates, and among working class voters, there was a significant decline. The only group they Democrats won among were people who make more than $100,000 a year. You can't win national elections that way, and it certainly shouldn't be that way for a party that fashions itself as the party of working people. So I think he has a point. Mike knows this because we've been talking about it. You can't approach working people like missionaries and say, we're here to help you become more like us. There's an unwritten, kind of unspoken disdain, unintended disdain in that. I think Biden has done, programmatically some good things for working people, but the party itself has increasingly become a smarty pants, suburban, college-educated party, and it lends itself to the kind of backlash that we've seen.
So here, David Axelrod is making a perfectly fair point. And he's not asserting what often people assert parallel to this point, okay? So setting his point aside for a moment, often what goes along with a similar set of words is people then saying, and that's why Trump is better for the working class, which is ridiculous. The Trump gains among working class Americans may have to do with a backlash, feeling like the Democratic Party doesn't represent their interests enough. It doesn't represent a rational vote in favor of their working class interests, because Trump is the opposite of that. The ocean-wide room, the gargantuous difference between how pro-working class the Democratic Party is compared to that of the Republican Party, and Trump specifically, cannot be ignored in that Trump is on the exact wrong side of that spectrum. But politics, voting is not determined based off of facts like that. Not to come off as condescending myself, but it is determined off of feelings. And unfortunately, people were convinced to feel certain ways that actually don't align with their interests. But I do think the Democratic Party, even while so much better than the Republican Party in their policies, which is what matters, should seek to improve, because clearly there was a failure there. But don't let people gaslight and pretend like this definitely means that the Republican Party policies are for working people. Now, ridiculous. Biden has been very much a president. Harris, supporting Biden's policy agenda, has been very much a vice president in favor of working class Americans, at least as it pertains to the comparison. And with labor, Biden has made history in multiple ways with how pro-labor he's been. And so it's bothering me to see the strategic discussion that's fair going on about how to win back over those voters, how to improve on policy to have an even stronger message for those voters, that at all means comparatively the Democratic Party is worse in the substance. Now, in the branding, in the vibes and the feelings, clearly Trump tricked people. It's hard to discuss this without coming off like I know better, but that's what happened. If that's what happened, I need to tell you that's what happened accurately. And that is what happened. He tricked people. He misled people. He branded himself And there was also, as I told you, a structural backlash to incumbents, regardless of left or right, going on across the Western world because of pandemic conditions that actually Biden and Harris have handled really effectively. So we have to figure out not only how to strengthen the policies, which I'm always working to do within the Democratic Party, but also given that even as it stands now and with the strong record of Biden and Harris, so what, again, how it currently is being represented, the Democratic Party is much better. And so given that, we need to figure out how to brand better, how to engage with the feelings of people better, how to move and compel people better. Because Trump's campaign of fear clearly worked. We're not going to engage in that. So then how are we going to tap into the vibes of people more effectively? That's a big, big question. Let me know what you thought in the comments. Support the show by getting that bonus show, and you can do that by clicking the join button below.